Okay, in this lesson, we're going to look at investigating the need for regeneration. We're going to look at different ways that the need for regeneration can be investigated and evaluated. So first of all, if you think about regeneration, you look at an area, so how can you tell an area is being regenerated? If you look at the picture, it's not a great picture, but there's a few things that give it away, and I think, in a way. So this is maybe a slightly better picture. Most of the time regeneration is easy to identify because you see lots of cranes, earth movers, concrete around, lots of workmen, things are happening, construction is taking place. Now, for example, in this picture shows construction of the the Custom House railway station to accommodate the new Crossrail, the rail link between East and West London. Now, Crossrail is something you've learned about during your GCSE. It's a new link connecting East and West London. It should have been opened already, but there's been a delay in finalizing the railway line. So there's a video I will put on Google Classroom for you to watch, just to remind yourself again what Crossrail is all about. So transport is actually really important when you think about regeneration. It's critical for London's infrastructure, but also for the regeneration process. So I want to use the example of the Jubilee line as a way to show the importance of transport as a way to support a regeneration process. So this map of London shows you the Jubilee line in this grey line. I can point it out here, from starting here, sort of Kilburn area, all the way through the City of London, onto the Isle of Dogs here, Canary Wharf, and up to Stratford. Now this part from here's London Bridge, from this part here, London Bridge, all the way to Stratford, that line, that part of the line didn't open up until 1999. It's known as the Jubilee Line extension. But it did mean there were lots of opportunities for development as a result of this extension in places like Bermondsey. Now, if you are getting on the Jubilee Line towards Stratford, the first stop here is Bermondsey, then Canada Water, Canary Wharf, etc. Now, Bermondsey was one of London's most derelict areas. It suffered badly from the closure of the docks, but the Jubilee Line arrival changed quite a lot of things. So suddenly the area became what's known as a property hotspot because it was so well connected to the City of London and Canary Wharf that a lot of investors bought up warehouses, terraced houses to regenerate that area. It was ripe for gentrification as a result. This also resulted in a change of image of the area from what it was to what it is now, and as a result, one of the things you've seen not only in Bermondsey but obviously across most of London is an increase in house prices. So Bermondsey's house prices have gone up by about 240% in the last 20 years. But how can you tell an area needs regeneration? So have a look at these two pictures. Just looking at it, you feel like there's something going on here. I'll come back to it in the lesson of how we can link that to factors of regeneration. But let me just look at sort of like how can you tell an area needs regeneration? Now, there's actually a certain number of factors. The first one is an economic factor. So there might be high levels of unemployment. Could be because of a recent collapse of industry, deindustrialization, and you create a negative multiplier effect. So as businesses close down, as industries close down, people become unemployed, have less income, therefore can spend less money in the local economy. Therefore, the local shops are struggling, may have to close down. Again, more people lose their jobs. There might also be social reasons for regeneration. So it could be areas where there's lots of low quality housing, for example, which was the case in East London. There might be a high percentage of adults with no educational qualifications. Could also be that healthcare facilities are poor and need to be improved. And finally, there might be environmental reasons. So the closure of industry quite often results in environmental decay, loss of derelict lands, abandoned buildings, but also it could lead to poorly maintained neighborhoods as councils have less income because people have less can pay less tax. They therefore have less money to look after the local area. At this stage, I want to focus on a particular area in London to look into this in a little bit more detail. And the area we're looking at is Custom House. Now, Custom House, I'm going to show you a map in a minute where it is, but it's actually going back to, it's quite a nice picture actually, this one. You can see obviously the Thames River, and here, over here is actually the City of London Airport. That Excel exhibition centre over here, and then further over on this side, further to the right here, you've got the O2. But going back in time a little bit, these are some pictures from the 1970s, 1980s, I think, beginning of the 1980s. Large areas were derelict, lots of empty apartment flats, as you can see at the left-hand side. And people still lived there, but it was the population numbers have dropped as well. So here's a map of London. The picture was taken from sort of this direction going into this area. So it was actually looking at a picture of mainly this sort of area here. So Custom House is this area over here, very close to Canary Wharf. There's the Isle of Dogs, and Stratford is over here. So it's a little bit to the east of that area. So Custom House, what can we say about it? In the 2001 census, Custom House and Canning Town, both wards in the borough of Newham, were two of the most deprived areas within London. So just some indicators there. Only 37.6% of adults were in full-time work. More than 43% of adults had no educational qualifications. A lot of the housing was rented, more than 70%. A lot of it was very low quality, as you could see in one of the pictures before. And one of the reasons was that the nearby docks closed down, causing lots of associated industries to close down as well, leading to that negative multiplier effect I was talking about earlier. It was previously only served by the DLR, but Crossrail will also reach that area, so obviously that will generate a lot more development in the area. At least that's the that's the expectation and the hope. So Custom House has been undergoing regeneration since the mid-2000s as a project known as Catch, Canning Town and Custom House. Until 2010, most of the funding came from central government, and it was very much a community-led regeneration program. So the community determined what regeneration was taking place. So it therefore created suburbs as a mixture of owned and social housing, and the program was funded to the tune of 3.7 billion pounds. Now, before going into a little bit more detail what has happened in that area, I just want to step back a bit. And if you think about preparing a case for regeneration, it's always very important to use statistical evidence such as census data to say what the needs are. So the 2011 census data included data about deprivation, such as household incomes, people living in social housing and claiming out of work benefits. So the table shows you the 3 indicators for the whole of Newham. Take some time to maybe stop the video here and just have a look at the figures, but I'll move on, because if you make a simple analysis of the data, there's some patterns there. If you spend some time looking at it, you can actually see that the wards of Canning Town North and Custom House have had some of the highest levels of deprivation. But also you can look at the link between these different sets of data. So you can look at, for example, the percentage of households in social housing and those or adults claiming benefits, and you can sort of try to link those together. And if you do that, you can do different things. So for example, you can use scatter graphs, as you can see in the figure below, as well as things like correlation techniques such as Spearman's rank. Now, a scatter graph allows you to draw that best fit line you should be familiar with from your GCSE course. And you can see whether there's a trend or relationship between those 2 indicators. So in this case, we have a positive relationship because the higher percentage of adults claiming out of work benefits, the higher percentage of households living in social housing and vice versa. But you can also use a Spearman's rank analysis that allows you to calculate the strength of the relationship between the indicators. So you can basically see how close the dots are to the best fit line. We will do that in a lesson when we're back in school, because it's good to do sort of a practical a task on that. So let's go back to Custom House. So the CATCH program focused on various areas benefiting the community, such as housing. Lots of affordable housing was created, particularly for family-sized housing. Existing social housing was to be renovated as well because it was quite poorly built. Employment, lots in training, job creation, shops were created, opened, public transport. These were all important things to create more employment. Education, local primary secondary schools received replacement buildings, and as a result, GCSE results actually improved greatly in a period of about 20 years. And then also focus on health as well, not only looking at health, things like health centres, but also redesigning streets to make them safer and calmer. However, since 2010, financial crash, government funding has been cut, and the focus is now really on private sector investment. And they use the stimulus crossrail to attract those investors. The Hallsville Quarter in Canning Town is an area that has seen that development as a good example of where private sector investment has taken place. There's a video there for you to watch, and the overall aim here is to develop lots of not only homes but also shops, supermarkets, small business premises, a hotel, etc. So there's a number of phases there. Phase 1 and phase 2 are both actually completed already. I'm going to show you here. There's these areas. There's the Canning Town tube station, and these areas are already completely finished. I'm rushing a bit because I've got a little bit of time left. The media portrayals of regeneration, quite often in the media, regeneration is shown in different ways, but also they're quite often opposing opinions, and I would like you to read these at your leisure. Images such as artists' impressions, like used on the slides before, are very powerful as well to show you representing place and attracting people. But also art can be used as well as a nice little video for you to watch how art can be used to changing the image of a place. And then finally, some questions for you to look at, which we will discuss in our lesson together. Okay, thanks for listening again.